Finance and Administration Committee, and as you both read per Aaron's committee reassignment, I will now be chairing F&A. So we'll start with a borough.
Madam Chair.
We'll start with a borough manager update.
Okay. What I'd like to do in the finance and committee meetings is go over the manager's report, which is included in the meeting package, and elaborate on any things in here, and then at the business meeting, which will take place right after that, I will give kind of just a brief overview of what I said at that meeting. I'll always like to talk about money first. So in every business meeting package, you get a report of dollars spent against budget figures for the sewer, solid waste, and general funds, and as well as a balance report in our various bank accounts on a cash basis. That is a reconciled account of what actual cash was in that account as of that time, the end of February 2019. So we're kind of a different kind of animal. We get all of our revenue in March and April, basically, and then the rest of the year we hold on for dear life to not spend it all. So far this year we're reporting a loss still of $296,000. We did, however, record $141,000 of tax revenue in February. We were starting to get consistent weekly deposits in. Thank you everyone who's paying your tax bills ahead of time, ahead of the discount due date. You get a 2% discount for doing that, and we like people who do that. This revenue avoided the need for the borough to transfer dollars from any other of its borough funds to cover obligations. This is the first time we've been able to say that in I don't know how long, at least as long as I've been working here. So that's positive cash flow news. The borough expects to book roughly 90% of its total tax revenue in the next several weeks up to that discount deadline. So it's really only about 10% of your tax revenue comes in at the face value or in the penalty phase. And at the end of the year, we'll probably collect a little more than 98% of the face value of the borough, the total tax assessment of the borough, because most people are smart and take advantage of the discount. So in the next few weeks, we're going to be flush with cash, which one of the things we're going to do with that cash right away is pay our minimum municipal obligation to the police pension fund, because the sooner you pay that, the sooner the money goes in the account, the sooner it starts earning interest, the better that is just from a cash flow management perspective. And it's just the right thing to do. You shouldn't wait till the end of the year to do that if you can afford to. We continue to wait for the paving contributions from Aqua and Pico of $62,000 and $286,000 respectively for the work they did last year. Once we get those funds in, those will be put in as a capital fund, and we're going to use capital fund dollars to pay off a note that we are not budgeted to make any more payments on. I will ask Pico and Aqua when that money is coming, because I want to make that payment soon so we stop paying interest on it. And the last bit of financial news is due to inclement weather earlier this month, and it seems like every time we schedule a date on our calendars with Donnell Renninger, a third-party CPA, it snows. So if you want to know when it's going to snow, call at the borough office and find out when Donnell is coming from Berks County. So she was here for only one of her 2 days, which delayed the work we needed to do to close the books. We're back on our schedule for first week of April. We should close the books out and then get our audit team in here and get the 2018 audit taken care of, which is going to be a whole lot simpler this year, due with all the work that's been done in the borough to clarify its processes. Quickly, a couple other things. I chose to highlight subdivision land development proposals as well as the comp plan. So it's a report that's going to look at those things. There's currently 3 active projects, major projects in the borough. They're all located downtown. They're all located on corners of the same block. 114 Forest Avenue is in the preliminary plan stage. That, as you know, is a 56-unit apartment building. Those were submitted January 25th. All of the reviews are in. They did a presentation to the Planning Commission at their March 4th meeting. The applicant has been invited to present plans to council and answer any questions at your April workshop meeting. And council is scheduled to take action on the proposal at its April business meeting. If we were to go any later than that, we need an extension of time from the applicant, but I think we'll be ready to make a decision then. 100 Forest Avenue, the gas station property, preliminary plans were submitted March 11th for an 8-unit mixed-use retail building. It's presently under review. The first public presentation is going to take place Monday, April 1 at the Narbath Planning Commission meeting here at 7:30. The applicant will be here, the borough engineer will be here. The matter will be reviewed for compliance with the code. This is a by right land development proposal, no conditional use process, so far no zoning hearing board action's been indicated with this proposal. 203 Haverford Avenue, similarly, it's owned by the same development interest, and they submitted plans on the same day, March 11th. That's a 14-unit mixed-use retail building, and that as well will be presented on April 1, along with 100 Forest Avenue. For everyone's information, we've received the draft Narbath Comprehensive Plan, and there is a public hearing scheduled for April 17th. During and prior to council's business that evening. Once the hearing is had and closed, council will have the option to take action to adopt the plan or make amendments to it. And then if there are substantive amendments that need to be made, we'll have to re-advertise for another hearing before being able to vote on it. So that plan is available on the borough's website for view and download, and there's a link to submit some comments as well. Other updates, we're working hard on capital improvements at Sabine campus and park. There's also some work going on in here that you can't see. We started fixing the water damage. We've got our pipes insulated. We just authorized plaster work to make the repairs. We're getting a quote for paint and carpet in this room and in the hallway too, so we will banish the ghosts of water damage with those projects, but we will probably not be able to convert the restrooms to ADA this year with the dollars we've allocated for that purpose, because we discovered some additional constraints with doing that. Namely, we're going to have to jack up the floor. So that, as you know, we don't know yet what that number is going to look like, but it's going to exceed what we've budgeted with those other matters we've already spent dollars on. But we're trying to make the most of the dollars we do have allocated, and we'll keep updated on that process. So that's just want to prime everyone too as well. We're going to talk about this in all of our committees coming up. It's getting ready. It's capital plan season is getting started, so we're going to talk about it here in finance next month. We're going to talk a little bit about it on Friday at infrastructure. We're going to put our capital plan hats back on and look at progress, dollars spent, things acquired, where we're at, what projects are in process right now, and what new information we've learned since the last time we did it. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks. So we'll talk about minutes, schedules of bills, and the appointment to the shade tree at our meeting at 7:30.
Okay.
Tom Rickards has pulled his name from the Shade Tree Commission pending the impressive applications. And he says, but you won't see the last of him. So I can speak on his behalf.
We welcome him.
Well, we have some really qualified folks, though. So anyway, the only two notes I have is the first is with this new appointment, Sean and I have actually discussed really working on the administrative side of this committee and putting to draft some of the conversations we had with how council communicates with the office. And we've kind of had iterative discussions at the table with Aaron with expectations, but there's been no real clear policy or draft. So I discussed with Sean, perhaps he and I just sitting down and taking a chunk of time and beginning to draft something and then presenting it for us to begin to edit, rework, get feedback, and then bring to the larger council. I'm on spring break next week, which is what allows me to take a chunk of time. And I welcome anybody who's able to do so, but wanted to, of course, run that by you all.
So just say more as a process for how, for example, how we would make appointments?
No, really
Or
just how we
work
would
together?
communicate, right.
How does this relate to the draft that Aaron has already been running? Is it going to be just sort of piggybacking off of that, or something different, or?
Just basically, I started, when we started to go through the drafts that Aaron created and you edited and the office had some input, and I just, because I'm visual, started to make flow charts, and really didn't do much with it other than think perhaps this is an option where, you start with an idea, path A, path B, who to consult to organize my own thoughts. I then got the Excel spreadsheet that Sean was directed to send us where we had to rank 1 to 5. Well, okay, so interestingly, I did do it and I shared with Sean. I found it incredibly unhelpful because it's not that easy. I mean, it's not as easy to say this is a 1, this is a 5. I wish that government and life worked like that you could prioritize it, but there's so many moving parts. So many of that, such as, the police policy. Well, that has to happen, but that's not coming directly from Sean, but yet you have a hand in supervisory role in that. That, to me, was not a useful tool, other than to reiterate the idea that I think there is a way to do a standard operating procedure with some flexibility where both the office and the table can kind of bring issues to a forefront and mount that out a path. Bob, you're here, so please join us or add.
I think you said that really well.
So
Okay.
I find the ranking useful because I want to have a sense of where the agreement is on 1s versus 5s, because my sense is that sometimes we're acting on a 5 when there are 1s to work on. So in kind of a gross way, I think is useful. Like the distinction between a 4 and a 5 or a 3 and a 4, that's not very helpful. But what's a 1, what's a 5? I think that is useful.
Well, I think we're probably going to have this conversation at the table. I guess I thought it was almost too in the minutia and the weeds. I was thinking a little broader.
I know, I looked at it and I can't believe the deadline's already passed. I didn't think it was easy, but I had the same feeling. That I felt like when I looked at the list, I thought I would be essentially pulling numbers out almost at random. Many of these, also because some of them are things that really are not. They're really very much within the purview of the office, and I don't even know that I don't even know that I have a sufficient body of knowledge and information to rank them in a way that would really be meaningful. Some of them are I don't know what the factors are that you have to deal with that would. So yeah,
That's how
but that's not an excuse. I should have done that.
So are you saying that you want a better way to kind of chart our path here?
Yeah, I can't even pull up.
I mean-
I can't easily pull up, but I can share it with you. What I started to do on a mind map, and again, this was for my own, just to organize my own thoughts a while ago. Bob, I'd actually started to say, gosh, this would really be helpful for me to think like this, where, I started to draft, here's an idea, whether it comes from the staff or the community or the council, what's the process of how that idea comes to the table? Who else needs to be consulted? Really just a flow chart. And again, this would just be maybe an exercise for my own organization on how to work like this, because I know that I have jumped this process in the past out of just being new and naive. But because it's spring break, I thought maybe I could take some time to think about it with Sean.
We have an appointment, right, Monday?
We do, on Monday. And then it could be something that we bring back that everybody says this is not helpful at all, or we at least have a starting path to begin to draft or edit something. And Barbara, please feel free to jump in here too, as a veteran here, and a total process-oriented person.
I was just starting to write a note so I could remember to say this at public comment, but I think you are spot on with having something that gives everyone a framework for how you go from an idea to fruition, where fruition might be, we decide not to do this. It doesn't mean that you execute it then. And part of the reason why I think it's so important is I know what it was like when I joined the table in April 2016. I had no idea how anything worked. And if somebody could have pointed me to that document, that would have been really helpful for me. Now, I know that there are some people that will be at the table where that's not how they think, that's not, they'll be like, oh, let me just ask so-and-so and then I'll be, but for me, it would have been helpful to have that, and I know there will be other people at the table for whom that will be helpful. And I think it's also good for the public to know this is how this works, because it's mysterious to most people. And it was certainly mysterious to me. I learned a lot being at the table about how things worked, and I have a totally different understanding now and appreciation for what it takes to start with an idea and get somewhere, even if the somewhere is, no, we're not going to do that. So I think it's a great idea.
And of course, I can't find this easily right now, and it's awkwardly, but I was trying to do that just to organize my own thoughts, and it very well could end up with a no, we're not going to do this, or it's getting sidebarred.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine to do. I think it could be helpful. I just, I don't want to think of it as either or, either the ranking, like in place of the ranking, we're doing this, because I found the ranking helpful. And I've been, looking for ways to really set priorities and be clear about those and make choices. I mean, because we have to make choices about what our priorities are.
Absolutely, and it's not in any, at least, Sean, hop in here if you disagree, but it wasn't to replace the rankings, because those were so in the weeds. Some of those tasks were in the weeds, but for those larger ideas, or we talked to them about buckets at one point, or, as well as Barbara, as you mentioned, a great point is even for the community to understand what is that process.
And I can't even begin to, I wouldn't ever suggest that should replace the rankings. I think, if you guys remember, my parting thoughts when I left council was there needs to be an understanding of a process, and there needs to be a list of the projects we're working on and which ones are hot button projects and which ones are lower down, and over time you look at that and you re-rank, and things change because things do change. But the process, while yes, it will change just like anything does, it would have more, though, staying power in that sense of it's a little less fluid, because you would have agreed this is our process for how we're doing some of these things. My thoughts.
And part of that process, I think, is understanding or asking the question, are there resources in the community, experts in the community groups, that we can leverage their knowledge, their experience?
I just wanted to add that I think that the list itself may need to be sorted a little differently or organized a little differently in order for us to prioritize. So I wasn't able to do the prioritization particularly in a useful way, because some of those items are actually, they're essential. So they're actually just, they're essential to the functioning of the borough. So for a way to prioritize issues that need to happen regardless of what we think. They're mandated by the law or by common sense. Then there are other items on the list that are really sequential in time. They're event driven. And so, how are we to prioritize 5 items that are all actually interrelated in time, and you can't prioritize the 5th thing when thing 1 has to happen first. And so, for example, the parking, all the items that are related to the parking system really could be like kind of one item. And then we decide, is that important for us to do this year or not?
Right. So that's back to that kind of bucket conversation that we're having. Agreed. Well, this is clearly a discussion for the larger council. And again, I just thought Sean and I could take a first stab at it. I don't particularly find those short conversations all that helpful. I feel as if we just start to get a little momentum, then we move on to something else. So I thought perhaps we could just collect some of these approaches, get some drafts and for folks to review. Okay. And then if there's any comments about that. The next order of business is the firefighter tax credit ordinance. I sent that both to you. We all received 2 drafts a few weeks ago. One draft was the ordinance that Lower Merion and regionally other municipalities use, which offers a 20% tax credit to your local taxes. The other was a revised ordinance that was tremendously limited. We talked about this in public safety. Rob, as you know, this lands in F&A given the fact that it's a tax credit ordinance. I sent you both a copy for review but not discussion that really mimics Lower Merion's and others, that essentially is both a recruitment tool but a retention tool. We heard from Chief Dixon that the value of institutional knowledge with firefighters who have sometimes decades of experience to educate new recruits is critical. This really is a gesture that equates to about $200, $3,500 a year for the borough, that really thanks these men and women who I did not know. I was incredibly uneducated on the amount of time these people put into this borough. I think it's a gesture that reflects our value system in Narbath, and I hope that you had a chance to take a look at it, because we are going to vote on advertising that at the meeting.
Yeah. I mean, you've said before, this is a national problem, so towns across the country are doing this. So we need to do something to support our volunteers.
Of course. And I think if we're going to do something, we should do something that's in keeping with the standards that are already in place in surrounding communities, not something that's different for reasons I'm not able to understand why. It's not a significant amount of money, so I would prefer to use the policy that's been tried and adopted elsewhere in the absence of a reason not to.
Sure. And I think Mr. Walpo can speak to if there's any of those questions or concerns, but I agree with you. Standard set, less restrictive. It is a very small gesture and token of our appreciation, and I would have to believe that the majority of our residents would support.
I think that's right. I think the majority of people will be happy to do that. I mean, I think it's I don't know how many taxpayers are on our rolls, with like 4,000 some people, but I mean, it's like $1.50 maybe per taxpayer per year. I think most people would be very much on board with that.
With that gesture. And again, it's only Narbath.
We really appreciate having our first responders.
Absolutely. And we can even ask Aaron to speak a little bit more of what happens when that volunteer base really is very low. You know, you move to a pay-per-call system. It's not a situation that we want to find ourselves in.
They're conferring a huge benefit on this community and surrounding communities. I mean, I think that we know the fire department responds to far more calls in the surrounding communities.
Well,
but
right.
I mean, that's sort of part of the give and take that we have with the community around us.
That's a good reason to match what Lower Merion is doing, because there's a lot of service across the boundary. And so if people are serving with volunteers from Lower Merion and, you know, getting an unequal benefit.
And I've said this in public safety repeatedly, but I do think it warrants saying it again, that this really has to be both a retention tool and a recruitment tool. So to just offering it to new volunteers, I think does not fall within the spirit of the gesture, nor does it provide the educational system that firefighters tell me is so necessary for new recruits that need to learn from our veteran firefighters. So, okay, so that'll move to the table and we will vote to advertise.
I support that. I agree.
Okay, any public comment? Maureen, I think you're the only public that hasn't commented. Anything? Jim? No? Sean? No? Okay, well then, with that said, let's adjourn.
Do you still want this?
Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Email?